I'm Lizanne Flynn. I'm a master healer who holds space for any earthling as they reunite body and soul. I am a bridge for relationships between all species so that the heart bond becomes stronger, deeper, and more loving. I serve in the roles of animal communicator, medium, and medical intuitive, and I use the tools of shamanic journeying and soul retrieval to support all earthlings in their recovery from past trauma. I'm certified as a canine massage therapist and Reiki master teacher. This is the Animals iView podcast. I honestly didn't intend to write a part 2 about neurodivergence, and you all know how this goes by now. The universe had other plans. My planned topic from brainstorming was, quote, your warm, fuzzy, vicious animal self may be postponed until 2 weeks from now, and the animals can't wait for that one. You know, to share all about our vicious selves that we like to think are nothing but warm and fuzzy, or is that fizzy? And of course, that joke is courtesy of the animals. Then again, if something else comes up in the meantime, which I already have a hunch it will, we'll follow the lead of energy as per usual. It was the phenomenon of Baader-Meinhof, otherwise known as the frequency illusion, that caused me to write a part 2. This cognitive bias occurs when something you've noticed or recently learned suddenly seems to appear everywhere, as in a new car you're thinking about buying, being pregnant, etc. This is made up of 2 parts, selective attention and confirmation bias. When you learn something new or find something interesting, your brain deems it as important. This triggers your brain then to subconsciously look for that thing without actively thinking about it. For example, if you learn a new word, your brain will subconsciously look for it, and you might start noticing it in books, articles, or conversations. This apparently is selective attention. Confirmation bias happens when you start to believe that something is more prevalent because you are seeing it more often, even if the frequency hasn't actually increased. And now comes the crazy part. Interestingly, the term Baader-Meinhof phenomenon has nothing to do with the person who researched it or any scientific background. Instead, it is named after a West German terrorist group, the Baader-Meinhof gang, active in the 1970s. The name was coined in 1994 by a commenter on the St. Paul, Minnesota Pioneer Press online commenting board. The commenter had heard 2 references to the Baader-Meinhof gang within 24 hours and decided to name the frequency illusion after them. So, if you were expecting the rather dusty, though vaulted halls of science to be behind such a term, think again. The link to the article from which I am quoting is in the podcast notes. Beyond this phenomenon is also AI hard at work, because in the podcast 2 weeks ago about neurodivergence, it's safe to say that numerous cookies from like-minded websites and Instas, Twitter accounts, etc. was activated, because I was doing a bit of research into the topic and wanted to make sure the information that I was sharing was on the up and up, as the kids like to say. Nevertheless, and despite this selective attention and confirmation bias, I also see a nudge from ye old universe, as if to say, yeah, you're not done with this topic just yet. There's more to share and the people want to hear more about this, which is how I'm interpreting it. So here it is, part 2 in all its glory, because part of what the nudges were about were some misalignments within human experience from other people who are just as passionate about neurodivergence as I am. I say misalignments because whenever possible, I think it behooves us to think of ourselves as human animals and not as human beings. The former tends to expand our viewpoint, while the latter tends to, at least from the animal's perspective, narrow it down into a human-centric and other animal exclusionary space. The typical human hierarchy of us at the top and everyone else below is flattened out, and we move from an ego system to an ecosystem. If you search the interwebs for ego system with the G and click on images, one of the first you'll see is a triangle of an ecosystem, and next to it, an ecosystem of a circle, which is pretty cool and gets the point home beautifully, I think. As I say in my podcast sign-offs, I have a social media presence on several platforms, and the two pieces of information that I received came from Instagram and from Twitter. And as I say, in my and the animal's opinion, the message to the rest of humankind was misaligned because it didn't honor the body first and foremost, and the talk about phenomenal powerhouse of wisdom that it is, and over which humankind's collective head most of this wisdom flies. In the midst of my getting pinged, which is like the other technical energetic term of squishy, which tells you everything you need to know, I kid, of course, it led me naturally to broaden my scope of perspective to Earth herself. And immediately there was a view of the elements of earth, water, and air, which in turn connected to our quote unquote weather patterns that are continuing to shift. And et voila, it became clear, at least to me in my world where they know me well, that Earth was the very essence of neurodivergent, and that it was important to share this perspective with other neurodivergencies, i.e., all y'all who identify as such, to further increase your comfort and connection in this human experience with your essence as being, I'm hearing, a twin to that of Earth, just as all other species are twins to that of Earth. The first piece of information came from Instagram, and a person was talking about how there is an apparent misfire of sorts between their perspective, out-of-date physical form, aka the body, and the brain of a neurodivergent person. And that because there was a mismatch, this was the explanation behind the feelings of being out of place, of feeling pressure, anxiety, etc., because the body isn't frankly equipped to process such, my word, energy, which can be seen in a framework of still giving the same kind of other label to someone whose body doesn't allegedly work properly, and at least that's my take. Because it also seemed to plug directly into the philosophy and identification of the word neurodivergent itself, where the blame, if you will, is placed on the brain and how it processes information. And so, from the perspective of the animals, this really is a multi-lane freeway of incredibly fast information that zips up and down the body, placing information here and there from the nervous system's input, not just the brain. Because the nervous system has two main parts, the central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system that includes the brain, the spinal cord, and a whole network of nerves across the body itself. So this Instagram post was almost branching off of the whole humans having a reasoning brain/mind that sets us apart from all other species, about which the animals frankly scoff and say, quote, "What good has that done you or us for that matter, this elevation of the brain? It seems to us that very little of the knowledge you espouse to possess as part of your brains, individually or collectively, has made its way into actual wisdom that you can pass along to the next generation. As an example, the variations among individuals in any species simply adds to the overall richness that can be folded into the collective and in turn deepens the broad spectrum of experience for the whole species. Each leopard does not have the same pattern of spots, nor does each zebra have the same pattern of stripes. Each bat, while equipped with the same general echolocation apparatus, chooses to share their choices and experience with the whole colony because it is the whole colony that is of utmost importance. The human animal seems to be fixated on both elevating and denigrating your individual natures by ostracizing in so many different ways those among you who are simply as individual as you are. In other words, it's best to consider the body not as being a piece of hardware that hasn't been updated yet, and that's a direct quote from this Instagram post. It's best to consider the body as a whole operation whose systems work together as an entire entity and not parts as in a car where the carburetor is seen to be better than the tires or the steering wheel. All three of those obviously and clearly serve a different purpose, and without one of the three, you aren't simply going to go. The second piece of information came from X-Twitter, which is something that I've heard of before in self-defense of those who have a neurodivergent body. And that was the standard cliche that we absorb other people's feelings, so they're to blame, in a sense, these other people, for having feelings at all. Because if they didn't have them, we wouldn't feel them, so quit it already with the feelings things. Oy vey. Honestly, this one more than any other standard victimizing of neurodivergent bodies, either by someone else or by ourselves, really gets me going. Because nothing is ever gained when you make yourself out to be the victim of anything, regardless of whether or not you are. This seemed to be another disconnect from the body itself and an abdication of responses versus reactions to energy input. It is absolutely a truth with our lowered threshold of stimulation that we are going to pick up on the energies of others, whether that's physically, emotionally, or mentally. We also do not have to respond, which may seem to run counter to who we think we are, yet that is a choice to respond at all. The reaction on the part of the body is a defense mechanism of sorts, and it's purely a matter of physics and energy where the body is concerned. Rain falls and something gets wet. Snow falls and streets get icy. It is literal cause and effect. Yet we seem to want to lean into the "but I can't help it" thingy, when in fact our response is completely within our management. I think it's better to be authentic and say, I was completely undone by that kid at daycare crying for their mom. I felt that so deeply, and it reminded me of how distant my mom was with me and how I never thought we connected. Ah, now we're getting somewhere. Versus, oh, that kid at daycare crying for their mom made me so sad and weepy all day long. I had much more trouble working with the kids in my class because all I thought of was that kid. See the difference? It is absolutely crucial that you know what your own hooks are when deeply emotional information comes in so that you can feel it, observe it, and know above all else that it isn't yours and will not ever be yours. Unless, of course, you choose for it to be yours. And yes, that maybe calls for a mental firmness or neutrality that may feel foreign to you or unnatural. The question becomes then, what else are you missing when you take on someone else's feelings and make your feelings about that a priority? Because that's what's happening when you say you absorb other people's feelings. It's a bit of a covert narcissism trap that I don't want you to fall into. And as far as the earth herself goes, I'm hearing, girl, let me tell you all about it. And there are hurricanes and tornadoes and fires and earthquakes that are increasing all in response to, and clearly not a reaction, our inept handling and labeling of Earth in human-centric ways. If Earth were to have our reactions, the weather patterns would be so much more unstable given the obvious possible knee-jerk reactions. Earth always chooses a response because so much hangs in the balance of her reaction or overreaction to any species and actions thereof. She has to manage rainforests and deserts and mountains and valleys and rivers and streams and oceans and mammals and plants and trees and insects, etc., etc., etc. She doesn't have time to become overly involved in the feelings of others because she knows her role in the big scheme of things. She doesn't have time to label other plants or any other species on Earth as not being of her or being different. She knows every single cell of every single being who walks on her skin intimately, and she knows that she is here to serve every earthling. Talk about a lower threshold of stimulation. She gives birth on the regular and still manages to hold it together, absent an occasional outburst, yet even she may be running out of both time and available resources as a living entity. Because she knows herself so well, she understands her place and her value and her positive aspects that are illuminated through the contrast. It's not a system that can be changed, this planetary design, nor can your neurodivergence, I will gently remind you again, also be changed. Earth chooses to embrace herself and all the rest of us because she knows bone deep who she is and how important she is to the rest of us. I think she would love nothing more than for you to align yourself with her in all of your glorious imperfections so that together you can continue to know yourselves and be one with her in service to yourself and to those around you to whom you are called. And at least that's how the animals see it. Thanks for listening today. Leave a review and be sure to subscribe to this podcast. I offer all new clients a free 15-minute consultation. To schedule, go online to lizanneflynn.com. Come find me on social media, Facebook, X, Twitterverse, Instagram, and LinkedIn. I encourage you to sign up for my quarterly newsletter on my website, where I also post notices for upcoming events, the starting date of courses in the Animals iView Academy, and online psychic fairs. The episodes of this podcast are available on my YouTube channel, complete with subtitles. You'll find that link in my podcast footer and be sure to subscribe. This has been the Animals iView podcast. I'll see you next time.